before the storm. The days following Christmas were a blur for Miles' heart. Back in Portland, the routine of Elm and Cedar grounded him the familiar hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of morning regulars, and the soft jazz that seemed to hold the space together. But the sting of that Christmas dinner lingered like a bruise tender to the touch. Miles hadn't expected an apology from his family, but the silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, not even a half-hearted email from his dad or Brody. Only Aunt Lauren checked in, sending a short message. "You're stronger than they know. Call me if you need me." He didn't call, but her words were a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone in Salem saw him as a punchline. Miles threw himself into work opening a new shop in Boise, Idaho, the 22nd in the Elm and Cedar chain. The grand opening was a small affair, balloons, free coffee samples, and a local folk band playing in the corner. As he handed out cups, a woman approached him, her face vaguely familiar. "Miles Hart?" she asked, her voice hesitant. He nodded, bracing for another jab tied to the viral video. Instead, she smiled softly. "I'm Tara, Emily's friend from San Diego. She told me about your shops. I'm visiting Boise and had to see one for myself." Tara, a wiry woman with bright red glasses, explained that Emily had been raving about Miles's resilience, sharing his story in their college dorm. "She's designing nonstop now," Tara said. "Your letter gave her courage." Miles felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet pride that his pain had sparked something beautiful. He calmed Tara's latte and slipped a handwritten note into her to-go bag. "Tell Emily to keep designing. She's got this." But peace is fragile, and Miles was about to shatter. 2 weeks after the Boise opening, a bombshell landed, one that would drag him back to Salem and force him to confront his family in ways he never imagined. The unexpected inheritance. It started with a letter delivered to Elm and Cedar's flagship shop in Portland. The envelope was thick cream-colored and stamped with the logo of a Salem law firm. Miles opened it at his desk, expecting a routine business matter. Instead, he found a legal document that made his heart race, a will, naming him as the sole beneficiary of his late grandmother Evelyn Hart's estate. Evelyn, his dad's mother, had passed away 3 years ago, and Miles had assumed her modest savings and small Salem house had gone to his father Caleb. The will, dated a month before her death, told a different story. Evelyn had left Miles her house, a plot of land outside Salem, and $150,000 in savings with a handwritten note. For Miles, who always saw the world differently. "Build something beautiful." Miles sat back, stunned. He hadn't seen Evelyn in years, not since she'd grown frail and moved into a care home. Their last conversation at a family barbecue when he was 20 replayed in his mind. She'd pulled him aside, her eyes sharp despite her age, and said, "You're not like them, Miles. Don't let their noise drown you out." He'd brushed it off then, but now her words felt like a prophecy. The will included a condition. Miles had to claim the inheritance in person at the law firm in Salem within 30 days, or the estate would default to Caleb. The catch: Caleb and Brody had already been notified. Miles knew they wouldn't let $150,000 and a house slip away without a fight. He called his lawyer Eric, who advised caution. "They'll contest it," Eric said. "Caleb's your dad, and he'll argue Evelyn wasn't of sound mind. We need to move fast and quietly." Miles agreed, but felt a knot in his stomach. Returning to Salem meant facing his family again, this time not as a guest, but as a rival. He decided to go alone, telling only Brian and Aunt Lauren. "Be careful," Lauren warned over the phone. "Caleb's pride is wounded, and that makes him dangerous." ambush in Salem. Miles arrived in Salem on a rainy February morning, his Civic splashing through puddles as he pulled into the law firm's parking lot. The office was small with faded carpet and a receptionist who smiled too brightly. The lawyer, Miss Clara Nguyen, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, her desk piled with folders. She walked Miles through the will, confirming its validity. Evelyn was sharp until the end, Clara said. She made this decision with a clear mind. But your father's already called, claiming you manipulated her. He's demanding a meeting. Miles's jaw tightened. He'd expected resistance, but not this soon. Before he could respond, the office door swung open. Caleb stormed in, Brody trailing behind both in stiff jackets like they'd dressed for a courtroom. You've got some nerve, Miles. Caleb spat his face red. Stealing from your own grandmother. Brody crossed his arms, smirking. What did you do, sweet talker, when she was half gone? Clara stood, her voice icy. Gentlemen, this is a private meeting. Leave or I'll call security. Caleb ignored her, pointing at Miles. You think you can waltz in, take what's ours, and play victim? I raised you, and this is how you repay me. Miles stayed seated, his hands steady on the table. He'd prepared for this. Dad, I didn't know about the will until last week. Grandma made her choice. If you've got a problem, take it to court. Caleb's eyes narrowed, but Brody stepped forward, his voice low. You're not getting that house, Miles. Or the money. We know people in this town. You don't. The threat hung in the air, blatant and raw. Clara picked up her phone, dialing security, and Caleb finally backed off, muttering, This isn't over. As they left, Brody shot Miles a look that promised trouble. Clara sighed, sliding the paperwork toward Miles. Sign here and the estate's yours, but expect a legal fight. Your father's already hired a lawyer. Miles signed, his hand steady, but his mind racing. He left the office with a copy of the will and a weight on his shoulders. As he stepped into the rain, he noticed a familiar black SUV parked across the street, Peter's. The tinted window rolled down just enough for Miles to see Peter's smirk before the car sped off. It wasn't a coincidence. His family was watching, waiting for him to falter. The plot thickens. Back in Portland, Miles tried to focus on work, but the inheritance consumed him. The house, a small craftsman on a quiet Salem street, was worth about $300,000. The land, a 5-acre plot near the Willamette River, could fetch $200,000 if developed. The $150,000 in savings was enough to open 2 more elm and cedar shops. But Miles didn't want to sell. Evelyn's note to build something beautiful felt like a mission. He envisioned turning the house into a community space, maybe a cafe or a bookstore, and the land into a garden for local farmers. It was a dream that honored her memory, but it also painted a target on his back. A week later, trouble escalated. Brian called Miles at 6 a.m., his voice tense. Check your email. Now, Miles opened his laptop to find an anonymous message sent from a burner account. Drop the inheritance, or we'll burn your shops to the ground. Attached was a photo of the Boise shop taken at night with a Molotov cocktail photoshopped in front. Miles's blood ran cold. He forwarded the email to Eric, who contacted the Portland police. It's likely a bluff, Eric said, but we're tracing the IP. Stay vigilant. Miles installed security cameras at all 22 shops and hired a night guard for the Portland flagship. He didn't tell his staff, not wanting to scare them, but the threat gnawed at him. Was this Caleb's doing, Brody's Peter's? Then came another shock. Luca, the barista who'd shown Miles the viral video, pulled him aside during a slow shift. "Boss, I heard something weird," Lucas said, glancing around. "My cousin in Salem knows Brody. Says he's been bragging about taking back what's his. Something about a deal with a developer for Grandma Evelyn's land." Miles frowned. The land wasn't Brody's to sell, but the rumor suggested a plan. He called Clara, who confirmed his suspicion. A local developer, Salem River Properties, had inquired about the plot, claiming they'd been tipped off by a Hart family member. "They're trying to force your hand," Clara said. "If they can scare you into selling, they'll split the profits with your family." Miles felt a surge of anger, but also clarity. This wasn't just about money. It was personal. His family saw him as weak, a pushover who'd crack under pressure. They didn't know the Miles who'd built 22 coffee shops from nothing, who'd faced eviction notices and sleepless nights to keep Elm and Cedar alive. He wasn't running the public confrontation. The drama reached a boiling point at Salem's annual spring market, a bustling outdoor fair where local businesses set up booths. Elm and Cedar had a stall offering free pour-overs and selling branded mugs. Miles hadn't planned to attend. He was swamped with the Boise shop, but Brian insisted. "Show them you're not hiding," he said. Against his better judgment, Miles went wearing his black apron and a forced smile. The market was packed with families, browsing crafts and food trucks. Miles was handing out samples when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Well, look who's playing barista again." It was Peter, flanked by Brody and a man Miles didn't recognize, a tall guy in a suit holding a clipboard. The crowd parted slightly, sensing tension. Peter stepped closer, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Heard you're trying to steal Grandma's house." "Miles, what's next forging her will?" Brody chimed in. "Yeah, tell everyone how you own two coffee shops, but can't afford a decent car." Miles felt the crowd's gaze, whispers rippling through the market. He could have walked away, but something snapped. 7 years of silence, of swallowing their jabs, boiled over. He stepped out from behind the booth facing Peter. "You want to talk lies? Let's talk about the developer you're scheming with, trying to sell land that's not yours." The crowd gasped. Peter's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly. "You're delusional, Miles, just like at Christmas making up stories." The man in the suit, later identified as a rep from Salem River Properties, tried to slip away, but Brian, who'd been listening nearby, blocked his path. "Going somewhere?" Brian asked loud enough for everyone to hear. He pulled out his phone, showing a screenshot of an email from the developer, mistakenly sent to Elm and Cedar's business account, outlining a partnership with Brody Hart. The crowd murmured, phones coming out to record. Miles seized the moment. "Here's the truth," he said, his voice steady but fierce. "I've built 22 coffee shops with my own hands. I didn't steal anything. Grandma Evelyn chose me because she believed in me, not you." The market erupted in whispers, some people clapping, others filming. Peter's face turned purple, and Brody looked like he wanted to bolt. The developer mumbled an excuse and fled. Caleb, who'd been watching from a nearby booth, pushed through the crowd, his eyes blazing. "You're tearing this family apart, Miles," he shouted. Miles met his gaze unflinching. "You did that years ago, Dad. I'm just cleaning up the mess." He turned back to the booth, pouring another coffee, as the crowd buzzed around him. The confrontation went viral, shared across X and local news outlets. "Coffee shop owner shuts down family drama at Salem Market." One headline read, "Supporters flooded Elm and Cedar's social media praising Miles's courage." But the backlash was fierce too. Anonymous accounts likely tied to Peter or Brody posted doctored photos of Miles claiming he'd faked his business records. Miles didn't respond. He'd said his piece. The legal battle, the market showdown, pushed Caleb and Brody to escalate. They filed a lawsuit contesting Evelyn's will, claiming Miles had unduly influenced her. The case dragged into March, costing Miles thousands in legal fees. Eric built a strong defense, presenting letters from Evelyn's care home staff, who confirmed her mental clarity and affection for Miles. She talked about him constantly, one nurse wrote, said he was the only one who listened. During a deposition, Caleb's lawyer tried to paint Miles as a greedy opportunist. "You're a barista, correct?" the lawyer asked, smirking. Miles leaned forward, his voice calm. "I'm the co-founder of a chain with 22 locations, 300 employees, and $10 million in annual revenue. I wear an apron because I love my work, not because I'm broke." The lawyer fumbled, unprepared for Miles' confidence. The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, seemed impressed, later ruling in Miles's favor. The will stood, and Caleb's case was dismissed. He and Brody were ordered to pay Miles's legal fees, a $20,000 hit they couldn't afford. But the victory was bittersweet. The lawsuit exposed more family secrets. During discovery, Eric uncovered emails between Caleb and a distant cousin, plotting to teach Miles a lesson by spreading rumors about Elman Cedar's finances. They'd even contacted a local health inspector, falsely claiming the Portland shop had violations. The inspector found nothing, but the betrayal cut deep. Miles realized his family wasn't just doubting him. They were actively trying to destroy him, the unexpected ally. As the legal battle wound down, an unexpected figure emerged. Uncle Andrew Peters' father, who'd mocked Miles at Christmas. Andrew showed up at Elman Cedar's Beaverton shop one evening alone, his usual arrogance gone. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Miles' wary led him to a quiet table. Andrew looked older, his eyes tired. "I was wrong," he said. "No preamble. I saw you at the market, heard about the lawsuit. I didn't know Caleb and Brody were going that far." He paused, sipping a coffee Miles had poured. "Peter's caught up in it too, but he's my son, so I stayed quiet. I'm done with that." Miles listened, skeptical but curious. Andrew revealed he'd been estranged from Caleb for years, resenting how Caleb always played the victim. "Your dad's jealous of you," Andrew said. "Always was. You got outbuilt something. He never could." Andrew offered to testify if Miles needed more leverage against Caleb, even sharing an old email where Caleb admitted Evelyn favored Miles. It wasn't a full redemption. Andrew had his own flaws, but it was a crack in the family's united front. Miles thanked him, keeping his guard up. "Why now?" he asked. Andrew shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired of being the bad guy." The final twist, just when Miles thought the drama was over, a final bombshell dropped. In April, Clara called with news. Evelyn's estate included a safe deposit box overlooked until now. Inside was a letter from Evelyn addressed to Miles and a small key. The letter read, "Miles, the house and land are yours, but there's more. Find the chest in the attic. It's yours alone." Intrigued, Miles drove to Salem, entering Evelyn's house for the first time since her death. The air was musty, the furniture draped in sheets. In the attic, he found a locked wooden chest, the key a perfect fit. Inside were stacks of letters, photos, and a journal. Evelyn's life preserved in ink. The journal detailed her own struggles, a family that doubted her, a husband who belittled her dreams of writing. She had never published, but her words were vivid raw, a mirror to Miles' own journey. Tucked in the back was a deed revealing Evelyn owned a second plot of land, a 10-acre parcel in Oregon's wine country, worth $500,000. She'd kept it secret even from Caleb, knowing he'd squander it. A note in the journal said, "For Miles, to grow roots or wings, your choice." Miles sat in the attic, tears in his eyes. Evelyn had seen him, truly seen him, when no one else did. He decided to keep the land, envisioning a vineyard or a retreat for artists like Emily. The chest also held a surprise, a manuscript, Evelyn's unpublished novel, a story of a woman defying her family's expectations. Miles vowed to publish it under her name through a small press he'd fund with the estate's savings. The ripple effect news of the second plot leaked likely through Brody, who'd been snooping around Salem's property records. Caleb called Miles, his voice shaking with rage. "You're hoarding everything. That land should be ours." Miles didn't argue. He hung up and blocked the number, done with the cycle. But the story spread, fueling more viral posts. Coffee King, inherits secret. Fortune 1 blog claimed, exaggerating the truth. Miles stayed silent, letting the noise fade. Meanwhile, Emily's designs gained traction. She sent Miles a sketch of a coffee shop uniform inspired by Elman Cedar's aesthetic. "For your next shop," she wrote. Miles hired her as a consultant, her first paid gig. Tara, her friend, started a blog, Dreamers Defy, featuring stories of people like Miles, Sarah, and Jamal. It grew to 10,000 followers, a platform for the doubted. Helen, the 70-year-old regular, even joined, sharing how she'd opened a flower shop at 50, despite her husband's skepticism. The new beginning. By summer, Miles stood in Evelyn's house, now renovated into Evelyn's Haven, a cafe bookstore hybrid. The grand opening drew a crowd including Aunt Lauren, Emily, Tara, and even Andrew, who brought a reluctant but quiet Peter. Caleb and Brody didn't show, and Miles didn't care. The space was alive, bookshelves packed with local authors, a corner for open mic nights, and a menu featuring Evelyn's favorite pecan pie. A framed photo of her hung by the counter next to Emily's dress sketch. Miles wore his apron, pouring coffee, smiling at Helen as she ordered her latte. A kid ran by clutching a hot chocolate. In the corner, a poet read to a small crowd. This was success, not the 22 shops, not the land, but this moment, this place built from pain and love. He thought of Evelyn's words, "Build something beautiful," he had, and the question lingered for anyone who'd faced doubt. If you were Miles, mocked for your dreams, would you fight or stay silent? What's your story, and what will you build? The shadow of success as the grand opening of Evelyn's Haven marked a high point for Miles' heart, but success, like a bright light, casts long shadows. The cafe bookstore buzzed with life. Locals flocked to the cozy space, drawn by the story of Miles's defiance and Evelyn's legacy. Social media amplified the hype with influencers snapping photos of the pecan pie and quoting lines from Evelyn's framed manuscript pages now displayed on the walls. Yet beneath the surface, new tensions brewed, threatening to unravel everything Miles had built. A week after the opening, Miles noticed a strange pattern at Elman Cedar's Portland flagship. Regulars stopped coming, replaced by unfamiliar faces, who ordered single coffees, lingered for hours, and left without tipping. Luca, the barista, pointed out a man in a gray hoodie who'd been sketching the shop's layout on a napkin. "He's been here 3 days in a row," Luca whispered, sliding a latte to Miles. Uneasy Miles checked the security footage and spotted the same man at the Beaverton shop, always alone, always watching. When he ran the footage by Eric, his lawyer, the response was grim. Could be corporate espionage. Chains like Brewstar have been sniffing around small brands like yours looking for weaknesses. Brewstar, a national coffee giant, had opened 3 locations in Oregon, each strategically placed near an elm and cedar shop. Rumors swirled that they were buying out independents or driving them out with cutthroat pricing. Miles brushed it off at first. His shops thrived on loyalty, not just price, but the hooded man's presence suggested something more sinister. Then a barista in Boise quit abruptly, citing personal reasons, only to resurface as a Brewstar manager a week later. She had taken Elm and Cedar's training manual, a detailed guide to their signature blends and customer service. Miles felt a chill. This wasn't just competition, it was sabotage. The family's new game, as if corporate threats weren't enough. Miles's family re-entered the fray with a vengeance. Caleb and Brody, humiliated by their failed lawsuit, had been quiet, too quiet. Miles should have known they wouldn't stay down. The first sign came at Evelyn's Haven during a poetry night packed with college students and locals. As a young woman read a piece about loss, the door swung open and Brody stormed in, trailed by a local reporter and a cameraman. The crowd hushed, sensing trouble. Brody, his face flushed with theatrical outrage, pointed at Miles behind the counter. "This man's a fraud," he shouted. "He stole our grandmother's legacy to build this sham." The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Dana Cole from Salem's Channel 7, thrust a microphone at Miles. "Care to respond, Mr. Hart? Your brother claims you falsified Evelyn Hart's will." Miles froze, the crowd's eyes boring into him. He'd faced his family's lies before, but not on camera, not with his dream on display. Before he could speak, Aunt Lauren, who'd been sipping tea in the corner, stood up. "Dana, if you want a story, ask Caleb Hart why he ignored his mother for years while Miles sent her letters." The crowd murmured, phones recording. Dana, sensing a scoop, turned to Brody. "Is that true?" Brody stammered, unprepared, and muttered something about family matters before storming out, the cameraman scrambling after him. The incident aired on the 10 p.m. news, edited to make Brody look unhinged and Miles stoic. Viewers flooded X with support. Hashtag Miles trending locally. But the damage was done. Dana's report dug into the will dispute, casting just enough doubt to spook some customers. Evelyn's Haven saw a 20% drop in foot traffic the next week, and Miles overheard whispers at the counter. What if he did forge it? He doubled down, hosting free community events, book clubs, jazz nights, to win back trust. But the stain lingered. Then came the real blow. Eric called Miles with urgent news. Caleb had filed a new claim, this time accusing Miles of tax fraud. The allegation was flimsy, based on anonymous tips about Elm and Cedar's books, but it triggered an IRS audit. "This is harassment," Eric said. "They're trying to tie you up in red tape." Miles spent weeks compiling records, his nights consumed by spreadsheets instead of coffee. The audit found nothing. Elm and Cedar's finances were clean, but the stress cost Miles sleep and focus. He suspected Caleb's anonymous tips came from Peter, who'd bragged about friends in high places at the spring market. When Miles confronted Peter at a Salem gas station, Peter just smirked. "Keep digging your grave, Miles. You'll trip eventually." The corporate conspiracy. The corporate and family threads converged in a way Miles never saw coming. One rainy evening, as he closed Evelyn's Haven, a sleek black car pulled up. Out stepped a woman in a tailored suit. her hair pulled back tightly. Miles, Hart, I'm Vanessa Reed, VP of Acquisitions at Brewstar. Her smile was polished predatory. She offered a deal Brewstar would buy Elman Cedar for $15 million, keeping Miles on as a consultant with a six-figure salary. In exchange, he'd sign a non-compete clause, barring him from the coffee industry for a decade. You're fighting a losing battle, Vanessa said, glancing at the cafe. Your family's lawsuits, our market pressure, will bury you. Miles declined politely but firmly. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. You'll regret this, she said, handing him her card before driving off. 2 days later, Elman Cedar's Boise shop was hit with a health code violation, rat droppings found in the storeroom, despite daily cleanings. The inspector, a nervous man who avoided eye contact, shut the shop down for a week. Miles hired a private investigator who uncovered payments from a Brewstar shell company to the inspector's bank account. The evidence was enough to overturn the violation, but the closure cost $50,000 in revenue and a hit to the shop's reputation. Then a whistleblower emerged. Jenna, a former Brewstar barista, contacted Miles through Tara's blog, Dreamers Defy. Jenna had worked at Brewstar's Portland office and overheard Vanessa discussing a heart project. Brewstar had hired a PR firm to amplify the family drama, leaking stories to blogs and paying trolls to smear Miles online. Worse, they'd approached Caleb offering to fund his lawsuits in exchange for dirt on Elman Cedar's operations. Caleb, desperate for cash, had agreed, feeding Brewstar internal emails from Miles' early days with Brian. The betrayal stung, but Jenna's evidence, a recorded conversation between Vanessa and a PR agent, was gold. Miles handed it to Eric, who filed a countersuit against Brewstar for defamation and corporate interference. The breaking point. The pressure pushed Miles to his limit. One night alone. In Evelyn's Haven, he sat at the counter staring at a photo of him and Evelyn from his childhood. She'd taken him to a Salem orchard, teaching him to pick apples, her laughter bright against the autumn chill. You're my dreamer, she'd said. Now her dreamer was drowning lawsuits, audits, sabotage, and a family that wouldn't quit. He considered selling just to breathe again. The thought shamed him, but it was there. A knock at the door snapped him out of it. It was Emily, his cousin, rain-soaked and clutching a sketchbook. I heard about the news, she said, stepping inside. I'm not here to pity you. I'm here to help. She spread her sketches on the counter designs for a new Elman Cedar logo, aprons, even a mural for Evelyn's Haven. You inspired me to keep going, she said. Now let me return the favor. Her fire reignited something in Miles. He hugged her, promising to use her designs. That night, he called Brian, Lauren, and Andrew, forming a small but fierce alliance. No more running, he told them. We fight smart, and we win. The counter-strike, Miles's counter-strike, was bold and public. He partnered with Tara's blog to launch a campaign brewed with heart, showcasing Elman Cedar's story, every struggle, every triumph. Tara interviewed Sarah, the Ohio baker, and Jamal, the Atlanta coder, weaving their stories with Miles. The campaign went viral, with customers sharing photos of their Elman Cedar cups captioned, "Brewed with Heart." Sales surged, and Evelyn's Haven became a pilgrimage site for dreamers, its walls now covered in notes from visitors. Keep fighting, Miles. You're not alone. At the same time, Eric's lawsuit against Brewstar gained traction. Jenna's recording, combined with financial records, exposed Brewstar's dirty tactics. A judge froze their Oregon expansions, and Vanessa was fired amid the scandal. Brewstar settled out of court, paying Elman Cedar $2 million and issuing a public apology. Miles used the money to open a 23rd shop in Seattle, designed entirely by Emily, its mural a tribute to Evelyn's unpublished novel. Caleb and Brody, meanwhile, unraveled. The Brewstar deal collapsed, leaving them with mounting legal debts. Peter, sensing the tide turning, distanced himself, even apologizing to Miles at a Salem diner. "I got caught up in Dad's mess," Peter said, his usual swagger gone. Miles nodded but kept his distance. Trust once broken didn't heal easily. The final revelation, as fall approached Miles, uncovered one last secret. While sorting Evelyn's journal, he found a hidden compartment with a letter dated a year before her death. It was addressed to Caleb, but never sent. In it, Evelyn begged Caleb to reconcile with Miles, warning that his jealousy would destroy the family. "Miles is your son, not your rival," she wrote. "I gave him my estate because you'd waste it like you did your own dreams." The letter shook Miles. Caleb's hatred wasn't just pride, it was guilt, festering for decades. Miles considered sending the letter, but chose not to. Caleb needed to face himself, not Evelyn's ghost. Instead, Miles published Evelyn's novel, Roots and Wings, through a local press. The launch event at Evelyn's Haven drew hundreds, including Dana Cole, who wrote a glowing feature Miles Hart turns family feud into literary legacy. The book sold modestly but resonated deeply. Its story of a woman defying doubt echoing Miles' own. The legacy lives on. By winter, Miles stood stronger than ever. Elm and Cedar expanded to 25 shops each with Emily's designs. Evelyn's Haven hosted weekly workshops for aspiring entrepreneurs, mentored by Miles, Sarah, and Jamal. Tara's blog grew into a podcast with Miles as a recurring guest. Even Andrew became a regular at the cafe, quietly proud of his daughter Emily's success. One evening, as snow fell outside Evelyn's Haven, Helen, the 70-year-old regular, handed Miles a small painting, a coffee cup under a starry sky. "For you," she said, "because you make the world brighter." Miles hung it beside Evelyn's photo, his heart full. The battles family, corporate, personal had forged him, not broken him. He thought of Evelyn's words, "Build something beautiful." He had, and he wasn't done. The question remained, if you were Miles, facing a world that doubted you, what would you build? What's your dream, and who's in your corner? Winter's arrival brought a deceptive calm to Miles' Hart's life. Evelyn's Haven thrived as a beacon of community, its walls adorned with customer notes and Emily's vibrant murals. Elm and Cedar's 25 shops hummed with loyal patrons, and the hashtag Brood with Heart campaign had cemented Miles' reputation as a symbol of resilience. The publication of Evelyn's novel Roots and Wings was a quiet triumph, its pages resonating with readers who saw their own struggles in her words. Yet Miles knew better than to trust the stillness. His family's silence, Brewstar's retreat, and the fading media frenzy felt like the hush before a storm. He was right. The first crack appeared in January during a rare snowstorm that blanketed Salem. Miles was at Evelyn's Haven hosting a book club discussing Roots and Wings when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but we're just getting started." Attached was a grainy photo of Miles at the spring market, his face circled in red. He froze, the laughter of the book club fading into a dull hum. The message wasn't signed, but the tone reeked of Brody, petty, vengeful, and desperate. Miles forwarded it to Eric, his lawyer who advised changing his number and tightening security. "They're lashing out because they're losing," Eric said. "Stay sharp." Miles tried to focus on the cafe, but the threat gnawed at him. He installed motion sensor lights at Evelyn's Haven and upgraded the cameras at all Elm and Cedar locations. Luca, ever vigilant, started checking IDs for large orders, suspecting Brody or Peter might send proxies to stir trouble. The precautions felt paranoid, but Miles couldn't shake the feeling that his family was plotting something bigger, something that would hit harder than lawsuits or viral videos. The ghost from the past, the next shock, came not from his family, but from a figure Miles had buried in his memory. One frosty morning, as he opened the Portland flagship, a woman stepped out of the fog, her coat dusted with snow. She was in her late 40s with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held a familiar intensity. "Miles," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "It's been a long time." It took a moment for recognition to hit Rachel, his ex-girlfriend from his finance days, the one who'd walked out when he quit his $70,000 a year job to start Elm and Cedar. She'd called his coffee dream a childish fantasy and left without looking back. Now here she was uninvited in his shop. Rachel sat at a corner table ordering a black coffee like she'd never left. "I saw you on the news," she said, her smile calculated. "The market showdown, the book, the cafes. You've done well." Miles nodded, wary. Rachel wasn't one for compliments without an angle. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I'm a consultant now working with the Pacific Ventures, a firm that invests in small chains. We're interested in Elm and Cedar. Not a buyout, a partnership. We'd fund your expansion, maybe take you national." She slid a business card across the table. Her eyes locked on his. "Think about it. You don't have to fight alone anymore." Miles pocketed the card, promising nothing. Rachel's reappearance stirred old wounds. Her betrayal had fueled his early doubts about Elm and Cedar, but her offer was tempting. National expansion could secure his legacy, outpacing Brewstar and silencing his family for good. He called Brian, who was skeptical. "She's a snake, Miles. And Pacific Ventures. They're known for taking control, not sharing it." Eric ran a background check, uncovering Rachel's ties to a Brewstar board member through a shell company. The partnership was a Trojan horse. Pacific Ventures would gain a stake in Elm and Cedar, then hand key decisions to Brewstar allies. Rachel wasn't just back, she was a weapon. Miles confronted her at a downtown Portland hotel where she was staying. "I know about Pacific and Brewstar," he said, tossing her card on the table. Rachel didn't flinch, her smile widening. "You're smarter than you used to be," she said. "But you're still small-time Miles. You can't fight us forever. Take the deal, or we'll make things harder than your family ever did." The threat hung in the air, colder than the snow outside. Miles walked out, his resolve hardened. Rachel wasn't a ghost. She was a predator, and he wasn't her prey. The family's desperate gambit as Miles grappled with Rachel's scheme. His family struck again, this time with a plan so audacious it bordered on unhinged. It started with a call from Clara, the Salem lawyer, who'd handled Evelyn's will. "Miles, you need to see this," she said, her voice tense. She emailed him a document, a petition filed by Caleb Brody and Peter to declare Evelyn's Haven a public nuisance. They claimed the cafe was disrupting Salem's peace with its events, drawing crowds that endangered the neighborhood. The petition demanded its closure and cited complaints from concerned residents. Clara was blunt. "It's nonsense, but they've got signatures. Someone's paying people to lie." Miles drove to Salem, his stomach churning. The petition was a long shot. Evelyn's Haven was a beloved local spot, but it could tie him up in hearings draining his resources. At the city council meeting, he faced a packed room, supporters in hashtag brew it with heart shirts, curious locals, and a small but vocal group waving signs reading Save Our Streets. Caleb sat in the front row, his face smug with Brody and Peter beside him. The concerned residents were a mix of strangers and a few familiar faces, friends of Peter's likely bribed. One woman clutching a script claimed the cafe's jazz nights kept her kids awake. Another man sweating profusely said the crowds caused traffic chaos. Miles recognized him as a mechanic who'd once fixed Peter's SUV. When it was his turn to speak, Miles stood, his voice steady. Evelyn's Haven isn't a nuisance, it's a home. We host poets, not parties. We serve coffee, not chaos. If you want the truth, ask who's paying these people to lie. He held up a photo taken by Luca of Peter, handing cash to the mechanic outside a bar. The room erupted, council members whispering furiously. Caleb shot up, shouting, "He's slandering us, but the damage was done." The council dismissed the petition, warning Caleb's group against frivolous claims. Supporters cheered, but Miles felt no victory. His family's desperation was escalating, and desperate people were dangerous. The arson attempt, the danger, became literal a week later. At 2 a.m., Miles was woken by a call from the Salem Fire Department. Evelyn's Haven was on fire. He sped to the scene, heart pounding, to find firefighters battling flames at the cafe's back entrance. The blaze was contained. No one was hurt, and the interior was spared. But the damage was clear. Scorch marks on the door, a shattered window, and the acrid smell of gasoline. The fire chief pulled Miles aside. This was no accident. We found a gas can and rags. Arson. Miles's first thought was Brody. The anonymous text, the petition, the timing it fit. But the police investigation pointed elsewhere. Security footage from a nearby shop caught a figure in a hoodie, not Brody's build, pouring gas and lighting a match. The figure fled in a car registered to a low-level Brewstar employee, a man with a rap sheet for petty theft. Eric connected the dots, Brewstar stung by their lawsuit. Loss had hired a thug to intimidate Miles, possibly with Caleb's knowledge. The employee confessed under pressure, naming a Brewstar manager, but claiming no direct link to Vanessa or Rachel. The manager was arrested, and Brewstar issued a mealy-mouthed statement denying involvement. The arson attempt backfired spectacularly. Salem rallied around Evelyn's Haven with volunteers repainting the facade and local bands hosting a fundraiser to cover repairs. The story went national, with CNN running a segment, "Small Town Cafe Survives Corporate Conspiracy." Miles, interviewed outside the cafe, kept it simple. "They tried to burn us down. We're still standing." The publicity drew thousands to Elm & Cedar's shops, and Evelyn's Haven became a symbol of defiance. But Miles wasn't naive. Brewstar's reach was long, and his family's silence after the fire felt ominous, like a snake coiling to strike. The double cross. The next twist came from an unexpected source, Uncle Andrew, the former skeptic turned ally. Andrew had been a quiet supporter since his apology, attending events at Evelyn's Haven and even helping Emily with her design portfolio. So when he called Miles asking to meet privately, Miles agreed, expecting another olive branch. They met at a diner outside Salem, the kind with sticky tables and flickering neon signs. Andrew looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with a coffee mug. "I've got something to tell you," he said, his voice low. but you're not gonna like it. Andrew revealed a bombshell. Peter, his son, had been working with Rachel behind Miles's back. After the spring market fiasco, Peter, humiliated and broke, had reached out to Rachel, offering insider info on Elm & Cedar's operations, schedules, suppliers, even staff names in exchange for a payout from Pacific Ventures. Rachel had used the info to orchestrate the health code violations and fuel Brewstar's smear campaign. Worse, Peter had roped in Brody, promising him a cut if they could force Miles to sell. I didn't know until last week, Andrew said, his eyes downcast. Peter's my son, but he's out of control. I'm telling you because it's right. Miles felt like he'd been punched. Andrew's betrayal, even indirect, reopened old wounds. He thanked Andrew but left the diner in a daze. Back at Evelyn's Haven, he confronted Emily, who was devastated to learn her brother's role. I thought he'd changed, she said, tears in her eyes. I trusted him. Miles hugged her, promising they'd get through it. He called Eric, who advised pressing charges against Peter and Brody for conspiracy. But Miles hesitated. A trial would drag on, and he wanted to protect Emily from more family fallout. Instead, he sent Peter a message. I know what you did. Stop now, or I'll bury you. Peter didn't respond, but the next day he left Salem, his social media accounts suddenly dark. The hidden ally amid the chaos, a new figure emerged, one who'd been watching from the shadows. During a packed open mic night at Evelyn's Haven, a man in his 60s approached Miles, his face weathered but kind. I'm Leonard Klein, he said, shaking Miles' hand. Evelyn was my friend. Leonard, a retired journalist, had known Evelyn in her writing days before she gave up her dreams for family. He'd read Roots and Wings and followed Miles's story online. She'd be proud of you, Leonard said, but you're in deeper than you know. Leonard revealed he'd been investigating Brewstar for years long before Miles's troubles. He had files, emails, financial records, even a whistleblower's testimony showing Brewstar's history of bullying small businesses. He'd also dug into Pacific Ventures, confirming Rachel's role as their front woman. They're not just after your shops, Leonard warned. They want your land, the wine country plot. It's prime real estate for a Brewstar resort. The revelation hit Miles hard. Evelyn's second plot, the one she'd hidden, was the true prize, and his family's greed had made them pawns in a larger game. Leonard offered his files and his expertise, asking nothing in return. Evelyn believed in you, he said. That's enough for me. Miles accepted, and together they built a case combining Leonard's evidence with Jenna's recording and Eric's legal firepower. They targeted Pacific Ventures, filing a federal complaint for racketeering, a bold move that could dismantle Rachel's operation. The complaint made waves, with the Oregonian running a front-page story. Coffee chain owner takes on corporate Goliath. The final showdown, the climax, came at Salem's Harvest Festival, a massive event drawing thousands to the city's fairgrounds. Elm & Cedar had a booth, and Miles was there pouring coffee and chatting with supporters. The festival was a chance to celebrate Evelyn's. Haven had reopened stronger than ever, and the federal complaint was gaining traction. But Miles should have known his family wouldn't let him have the spotlight. As a local band played Caleb Brody, and a reinstated Peter marched through the crowd, trailed by a small group of hired protesters. They carried signs, Miles' heart stole our legacy, and Evelyn's Haven is a lie. Caleb climbed onto a hay bale megaphone in hand and launched into a tirade. My son's a con artist, he bellowed. He forged my mother's will, cheated his family, and now he's fooling you all. The crowd booed, but some listened, phones recording. Brody and Peter handed out flyers repeating the tax fraud lie and accusing Miles of exploiting Evelyn's memory. Miles stood at his booth, heart racing. He could have ignored them, let the crowd drown them out. But this was his moment. The line he wouldn't let them cross. He grabbed a microphone from the band's stage, the music halting. Enough, he said, his voice booming across the fairgrounds. You want to talk about family, Dad? Let's talk about how you ignored Grandma Evelyn, how you sold her dreams to Brewstar for pocket change. Let's talk about Peter, who betrayed his own sister for a payout. Or Brody, who'd rather burn my cafe than build something of his own. The crowd roared, some chanting Miles. Miles. Evelyn's novel, its cover gleaming in the festival lights. This is her legacy, not yours. I built Evelyn's Haven for her, for Salem, for everyone who's been told they're not enough. You can't take that away. He turned to the crowd. Who's with me? Hands shot up, cheers erupting. Even Dana Cole, the reporter, was there, her camera crew capturing every word. Caleb's face crumpled, the megaphone slipping from his hand. Brody tried to rally the protesters, but they scattered, sensing the tide. Peter, caught on camera, fled into the crowd. The festival became a celebration, with the strangers hugging Miles, buying coffee and sharing their own stories of defiance. The moment went viral, with hashtag Brewed with Heart trending nationwide. Caleb and his crew slunk away their lies, exposed their power broken, the aftermath and new horizons. The festival marked a turning point. The federal complaint against Pacific Ventures led to a DOJ investigation, with Rachel facing charges for fraud. Brewstar, desperate to avoid scrutiny, sold its Oregon locations to a co-op of local roasters, including Elm and Cedar. Miles used the wine country land to start a vineyard. Evelyn's roots, with profits funding scholarships for dreamers like Emily. Her designs now graced every Elm and Cedar shop, and she opened her own studio in Portland, mentored by Miles. Caleb and Brody faded from Miles' life, their debts and shame isolating them. Andrew, seeking redemption, volunteered at Evelyn's Haven, teaching writing workshops inspired by Evelyn's novel. Leonard became a regular, his investigative skills helping Dara's podcast expose other corporate schemes. Helen, the 70-year-old regular, gifted Miles a second painting, a vineyard under the stars, now hung above the cafe's fireplace. One spring evening, as Miles poured coffee at Evelyn's Haven, a young woman approached, clutching roots and wings. This book saved me, she said, her voice trembling. My family said I'd never be a writer. Now I'm trying. Miles smiled, handing her a latte. Keep writing, he said. You're enough. He thought of Evelyn, of the chest in her attic, of the battles he'd won. His story wasn't just his, it was hers. Sarah's, Jamal's, Emily's, and every dreamer who dared to rise. The question echoed, what would you build against all odds? What's your haven and who's by your side?